Yeah. All the
So,
webinars.
so people are starting to log on. So why don't we go ahead and get started? Just make sure we cover everything in the time we have available this afternoon. First, before we get started, though, I want to welcome Linda Compte, our president this year, president of TCCTA. She is at Houston Community College. And Linda, if you'd like to say hi real quick, we can greet everybody and then we'll get started.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. And we're grateful that you have joined us today for this very informative webinar. I know you're going to get something from it. We've had a series of really good ones this week, so I want to thank the state office staff for putting all of this together. We're grateful for all the work that they do. And before we get on, I do wish all of you a very blessed and happy Thanksgiving, and probably won't see all of you or talk to all of you before the other holidays, so same for that. I hope the end of the semester is going well. I know it's that slippery slope time when everything is just running together and falling in place, hopefully. So I hope that you've all had a good semester and that the end goes well. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Before we get started, let me remind everybody we have been doing a lot of these online conversations. You can find them on our YouTube channel. Just look for TCCTA in YouTube. You can subscribe to that channel. You can find links to all of the other programs we've been doing this week. Also, our convention will be coming up in February, and I hope you'll take a minute to look on our website for information about that. You can go ahead and register. I'd encourage you to go ahead and register just so you have that taken care of before the semester ends, and we'll be ready to go in February. The convention will be different this year. Instead of meeting in Houston, we're doing this online. And instead of it being over a course of a weekend, like it always is, we've spread it out because we do about 170 meetings in 2.5 days. And that's just more than you can do online. And so this will be 4 Fridays in February. So go ahead and look at that schedule, put that on your calendar, and be sure to be with us for that. So also, if you have questions during the conversation or comments, please put them in the chat section of the YouTube page. I'll keep an eye on that and make sure we get your questions answered as we go along. So Amitai Abramovich, thank you for being with us today. Been looking forward to this conversation. Amitai is assistant professor of psychology at Texas State University. He's a licensed clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist and a member of the Department of Psychology at Massachusetts General Hospital. Am I right, Amitai, this is your 4th year at Texas State University?
5th.
5th. So I'm horrible about keeping track of time. Just ask my girls. But not a native Texan, but we're glad to have you with us in Texas now. Amitai and I have been talking for some time about the transition to COVID, everything that happened last spring at community colleges and universities across the state. We were comparing notes, and I was really struck by the common themes that were running through all of it among our members and in his experience. And I thought, this could really be a worthwhile conversation for all of us. So we're going to be talking today about lessons that Amitai has learned in his teaching, in his classrooms, that are effective with his students, but also about just the nature of stress as it applies both to students and to faculty. And I haven't seen nearly as much conversation around the impact that COVID is having on faculty as we're hearing is happening, what's happening with students. And it's something that we really need to be talking about, both because it's important that we get on top of this and that we're addressing the needs of faculty, and also because if you care about students, you need to care about their instructors and make sure that that we're dealing with this across the board. So let's go ahead and set the table a little bit. Amitai, why don't we start out just talking about, from your background and your area of expertise, talk to us a little bit about stress. what is stress? Where does it come from? What does it look like in this time of COVID? Maybe we could set the groundwork with that, and then we can get into it from there.
Sure, and thank you for having me. Happy to be here. Uh, so the idea about anxiety and fear and stress is sort of a global word that captures both of them. Is about the perception of threat, right? It's the perception of threat to one's life or threat for in terms of serious injury. Um, and COVID is a specific kind of threat, right? It's invisible. It's both invisible and it's potentially fatal. There is a real threat, and to me, it always seems to sort of be an analog to terror attacks. Terror attacks. The whole point about inflicting dread on the population is that you cannot see it, you cannot expect that, and then even though sort of there are little resources in terror, the effect is very significant. So, COVID with being threatening and both threatening and invisible is almost like a perfect storm. It's a recipe in a way to experience stress and anxiety.
It does seem like we're geared more for threats we can see. If there's a wild animal coming at you, that's stressful, but you know what to do about that.
Yeah.
But this seems like we're really not built for this kind of threat.
Yeah, and actually, this is in line what we see in research. There is an increase in anxiety, stress, reporting of symptoms of depression, insomnia, an increase in actually formal diagnoses. And I would love to direct you to a website. The actual name is Psychology of Pandemics, but the URL is coronaphobia.org. One word, coronaphobia. This is a website run by Stephen Taylor from British Columbia, and Gordon Espenson, also Canadian, is an expert in anxiety. And their studies, which are available on the website, are very clear that everybody now senses significant stress, other than people that are very unique in terms of their beliefs about COVID. They believe that the threat is exaggerated in the media, and that they believe that they have superior health. And this is why they don't engage in social distancing. Other than that, most people now, it's like the rule, not the exception, to be more stressed and have lower subjective well-being.
Is that a coping strategy to deny that you're susceptible to it? Is that why people do that, do you think?
It's a great question. In a way, it could be either viewed as a coping strategy or basically in a weird way inoculate yourself from stress. If it's not dangerous and I can convince myself, maybe I'm not going to experience all the stress that accompanies real threats, right?
So you can make you might be able to make the stress go away even if you can't make the actual threat go away.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Their research, though, show that this directly leads to not complying with social distancing and mask wearing.
So so you're actually making yourself less resilient and less capable in your responses by denying the reality that's around you. Yeah. So you can look at stress clinically, kind of just in a broad sense, and specifically in this sense. And it seems like there's both the hiddenness of it, the fact that we can't see it and touch it directly, and there's also just the ubiquitousness of it, that every time you turn around, we're having to think about things. We think we can't do things the way we normally would. Things are a little more difficult. And that creates a kind of stress because we're just working harder to do normal things. Talk about that a little. What does that look like, maybe specifically in the context of teaching? How do we address that?
So a step before teaching, there are other factors that are sort of indirect, that sort of stem from the way we now handle our life, right? For example, isolation from others. We we humans need to belong, need to be cared for, need to socialize with others. And the fact that we don't do that sometimes at all or very little, uh, this is a major issue. And the concept of what they call thwarted belongingness is actually has been known for years as a predictor for suicide ideations. So being isolated from others is another sort of layer of stress. And another one is because of that, the way we now handle ourselves mostly at home is that we don't get a chance to engage in many pleasurable activities like meeting with family or holidays. Also meaningful activities to us like volunteering or helping a friend or going to church. It's not only that we carry a lot of burden, it's the fuel that makes us more motivated and allow us to handle the daily work and boredom, which is pleasure and meaning. It also sort of reduces, and all the resource theories that speak about a finite amount of resources that we have are depleting physiologically, psychologically, and at the same time, we don't get sort of the gas we need to put in our tank to carry us forward in our journey, right? So we're getting more stress, but less of those positive aspects of our lives.
So at the same time, things are getting harder and we need more resources is the very time those resources aren't available to us.
Exactly.
And getting those needs met, we either don't get them met, in which case we think we get depleted, or we have to develop new strategies and get them met in other ways.
And this was what we found in a survey you sent out to members. 63% feel either worse or much worse in terms of stress. And the same percentage reported they engage less in wellness promoting activities. So it shows the exact picture, more stress and less of the wellness activities. Yeah.
On that survey, by the way, Katie will put a link in the chat and also on the resource page beneath the video when the recording of this is up. If you'd like to participate in that survey and haven't already, you'll be able to click on that link and respond to it. I'd be very interested to hear what our members are finding on that and how they report on these issues. And often when you're taking care of other people and your attention is on your family, your children maybe, certainly on your students and figuring out what they need and making sure they're on top of things, it's easy to not pay attention to yourself. And then you run into these deficits even more quickly and maybe go deeper before you realize that it's even happening.
And you can add to that the whole story about 2020, right? With political turmoil and natural disasters, and even the little things, right? Every routine, going to the grocery store needs more resources to plan what you put this, what you touch, and when to put the the alcohol thing on our hands, and engaging with children. They're teaching, studying remotely, and I'm my own family IT guy. I can sometimes hear, oh my God, I cannot connect and I have to run in the middle of something. And the mere fact that there is uncertainty right now, all of those, again, it's a sort of a package deal. It's sort of an exact recipe for depleting of those resources.
I could see it affects your self-image, the way you see yourself. If you feel like, hey, I'm on top of this whole life thing, I think I got this. And then all of a sudden I'm having to learn everything over again. I thought I knew how to do this, and you get the rug yanked out.
We used to go into classroom, right, as faculty, and this is more about teaching, but we used to go into the classroom. This was our domain, right? We are used to the class. We know how to operate everything. We feel confident. We have our own shticks and maybe jokes. And we taught that course maybe many times. So we feel very much, that we are comfortable with ourselves. And now suddenly the main teaching tool, which is face-to-face, is gone. And most people will need to, so study more, new technologies, and then where is our comfort zone, right? And this is part of our professional identity, right? So we now feel that we have lower self-efficacy, and this damages that part of our self-image, because even our work, when we always used to feel confident when we teach, suddenly we lack confidence and we don't know, we make more mistakes, we feel embarrassed more, we encounter those technological issues. And this is something that affects the way we perceive ourselves.
And so that's what we're struggling with, is how do we get our feet under us so that we can feel capable, like this is something that that we can do well. That's where I think that's where a lot of our stability and sense of security, resolving a lot of that stress, just it comes from that sense of capability.
Yeah, exactly. And I can say that from my end, and talking to other faculty and also in other universities, it's very clear that we actually require more of that because we have a lot of students that need support. And the number of students that we now get to, they have emotional issues and technological issues, and we have to solve problems. We have to sometimes fight over them so they won't drop out. And especially Texas State did an internal survey on first generation students. And in those populations, you see that there are huge problems and they need us more. They need some support on multiple levels, which sort of you need to feel comfortable with where you stand to do that. You need to feel comfortable doing an office hour on virtual, which is the exact opposite, right? We have to, instead of, hey, yeah, come into my class. If you walk by the corridor, let's make it casual. Now we have to make it very specific and time it.
And that's outside the discipline where maybe you feel that's where you're an expert. But some of the most crucial conversations are going to be outside of your discipline. It's just going to be the human interaction between students. So what are some of the things we can do? I mean, as it seems like that's where maybe we need to be focusing our energies, is around some of the strategies and capacities we do have. What do you see there?
So I've sort of thought about some things we can do. But before that, I just want to stress one important point. There was a study done in UCLA. It's a survey of 24,000 college professors. And by far the number one, the top source of stress was self-imposed high expectations among faculty. The second one was lack of personal time. Now, the fact that it's self-imposed high expectation tells me that this is something that is a little bit we can control. We can work on that, right? On the way that how the gap between our expectation and what actually we're doing right now. And the second thing I wanted to say is that I talk to a lot of people that will tell me, I don't feel those classic, what you say, anxiety, and I don't have insomnia, but something is off. And it's important for people to understand that even though you don't see those classic presentations, it affects us all. And it could be expressed by being more irritated quickly, or you're less patient. Suddenly you're like, hey, this is not me. And this is okay. It's completely normal. And this is part of how people respond to stress in various ways. So I think that the first thing we should think about is to actively exercise self-compassion. I call it shouldism. I should, I must, I have to. So no, you don't have to. You don't have to be the world expert on break rooms and Zoom, and you don't have to produce videos like you are in Hollywood, and you are completely allowed to waste time a bit and to procrastinate and to do that without a lot of guilt. And sometimes, and all of us experience that right now, we have those moments like, I cannot do that. I need a break. So instead of sticking around and suffer, try to make sure that you can get up and take a literal break and take a 30 minutes walk if you're at home. I think that self-compassion is the key here, because again, this is all about self-imposed high standards, and we get to set the standards and we get to set how we feel about them, right? So this is very important, that people will say, hey, I don't need to do that in a way that will maybe to reach the same level of teaching, for example, like I used to teach face-to-face.
And
That's not
that's
normal.
something I think we know how to do with our students, that there is a learning curve. You
Yeah.
don't start out as an expert. And so you will learn just through experience and trial and error and listening to your colleagues, and you'll get better. And the fact that you didn't start out at that level, you wouldn't expect your students to, and yet we seem to expect ourselves to.
Certainly, a bit of self-compassion is important. Now, another thing is we talked about that fuel we need to keep us going, right? That is now rare. Um, when we talk about anhedonia, which means reduced ability to experience pleasure and meaning from previously pleasurable activities, we have, let's say, less hedonia, right? We feel less meaning and pleasure now. But I suggest that we need to focus on it because reducing stress, it's not only about breathing and going outside, it's about actively doing something that is significant. And I suggest there is a treatment called behavior activation. And basically what it means is we can create a list of stuff that we enjoyed or were meaningful to us. It could be volunteering, it could be, certain hobbies. Make a list and see out of that list what currently in the current situation, living arrangement, etc., you can engage back and choose one. Start by choosing one and engage it more. It could be anything. It could be also a hobby or something on your bucket list that you can do now that you never did. This is like nourishment for the soul, right? It's a psychological nourishment, and I think we should actively seek those things that we sort of I can't be bothered with that. Maybe so. Yeah, it's almost like forcing yourself to go back on track in terms of doing stuff that is meaningful or enjoyable for you.
Yeah, and that's something. Even creating rituals within your family, just that we're going to do things, and that gives you a sense of control.
Yeah.
That you're doing it because you're choosing to do it, and finding those things you have pleasure, and recognizing that the value you're getting from it as you do it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and another thing is that we need to socialize. It's like oxygen to us, and we should actually put up, an effort to do that. And it could be if you do it safely, face to face or online. It's important to us. You can have a regular weekly happy or bi-weekly happy hour with friends. There are now. Nearly every week, I see another website that allows you to do fun games online, Cards Against Humanity and stuff like that. You can have a drink and meet with your friends. This is something that it's important for us, and this is something that some people don't realize that if you the price of not engaging in social activities at
Mm-hmm.
all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What are some other things you'd say are the things we can do? It's probably easiest to notice the things that have been taken away from us, but
Yeah.
what do you see kind of top of mind, the things that we need to be focusing on that we can do?
So first of all, one thing that sort of is like a drag us down is basically over engaging in media, especially politics and COVID. And now we have research to show that it's good to be informed, especially these days. But if you go a bit further and overboard, it has a toll, a mental toll. If for example, the difference between being informed this morning about maybe the number of infected people in your state or county or city, this is one thing. But doing this 5 times a day, it loses the informative aspect and they start becoming a burden. Other things that I recommend that people will do is just go outside. We have this exact same sort of view in front of us, and just take yourself and go outside, preferably when there's green around. And I know that people that are depressed or stressed they just want to be stationary, but this is something we need to actually actively fight against and take ourselves outside. And if you're doing chores and you can't be bothered with that, it's highly recommended to put some upbeat music. Um, and of course, there's always the issue with exercise. People recommend exercise all the time, and exercise is great, but nobody likes that, right? Very few people like exercise. So let's not call it exercise, but understand this: our mobility levels have been went down. I'm talking about vehicles right now. The number of steps we take a day, the number of hours we stand, is depleted, and we are not designed to be stationary. In fact, there is an association between being stationary and subjective well-being. So don't call it exercise. Do more. Behave. Right. Get creative. Think about anything that will move your body more. That's very important.
So yeah, we'll just call it movement, just
Yeah.
not exercise. Just
More movement. Yeah.
yeah.
Engage the muscles. Another thing is that, we always used to, up till 8 months ago, have this thing that we can look forward to, right? A visit from a friend, a wedding, traveling, a vacation. We don't really have those now. So first of all, we can create those artificially. In the summer, in my family, we used to have for several weeks every Saturday family party. We used to get stuff to grill and music, and some cornhole and stuff like that. We had a time, and it was an event for us, right? It was a small but event. We looked forward to it, and we planned a little bit. And now with the vaccination coming, and that maybe allow us to look at the summer, next summer, it's a good time to start fantasizing about your vacation. Maybe even start to plan it. Might
Mhm.
not work at the end, but this is something we need to look forward to. Some fun, engaging activities.
I think I read somewhere, and tell me if I'm wrong because I've read all kinds of things online, but the pleasure people get from planning vacations is sometimes greater than the vacation itself. so, so we can get the pleasure of
Yeah,
fantasizing next summer's vacation now.
exactly. And two final things that I want to say. First of all, it's important to ventilate. And please try not to tell yourself that sentence, how can I complain when there are hungry kids going hungry? First of all, the fact that you complain is not going to feed kids or anybody else. But it's okay to say, I am not doing great, regardless of any other distresses and natural disasters around the world. Uh, Find a group, maybe other professors that deal with the same stuff, and yeah, say that it's hard and share what's going on with you, and allow yourself to complain. It is okay. You don't need to be 100% okay all the time. And if it's not with your, family members or close friends, it could be with other people at work. And basically, I can wrap everything up with a tip that, I mean, don't beat yourself up too much. Uh, we humans are designed to have negative self-talk. If you try to ask people, when is the last time that you walked around and said, "Oh man, I'm so stupid. Why did I do that?" As opposed to when the last time you walked down the street and said, "You know what? I actually did well. I'm doing well. I'm okay." We are programmed because we need to expect that threat, but we should first of all. We don't need to beat ourselves up for every mistake. We don't have to be super nice, perfect, super teacher, super parent, super colleague. It's okay. It's okay not to be that. And the notion that expectations are lowered, it's not permanent, and it's okay to be positive about yourself. And I actually encourage people, if you capture this negative self-talk, oh, I'm not doing this, I'm bad at that, you can change that. You can say, you know what, this time I made a mistake, but maybe it'd be okay later, or it's okay. These days I'm allowed make a mistake or to embarrass myself in front of students. It's okay.
Well, Katie has linked to something in the chat section, which I believe is the Master Teacher Meetups. We moved our Great Teaching Roundup, our Master Teacher Seminar we do every May out in Kerrville. We've moved it online, and those groups meet weekly, small groups of 8 to 10 faculty, and they do exactly what you're talking about. These are facilitated discussions, and they're really around supporting each other, sharing tips. What are we learning? How can we grow by doing that? And also just venting and saying, hey, this is hard, and you're not the only one going through it. So have a look at that group we usually have about 35 people that meet us out in Kerrville. I believe we have about 350 that participate in these meetups. So one of the good things that has come from COVID is that we've increased the participation by an order of magnitude on those meetups. So please have a look at those. We've got great facilitators for those. I see Essie Childers chiming in. She's one of our great leaders. So thank you, Essie. And Nicole. We have a question here. We're going to pivot to some teaching ideas here in a minute, but there's a good point here about uncertainty. Peter Martinez asks, do you think that we have less stress as we move forward since we have more experience, or will continued uncertainty and seemingly constant change make life more stressful? What is the role of not knowing and kind of chronically not knowing do to humans?
So it's a great question. First of all, we know that people with the more extreme anxiety, they have we actually call it intolerance to uncertainty. There are actually psychological measures that assess that. And again, uncertainty feeds anxiety. We need to know everything that even things that are unfamiliar. If you go outside and see an alien, the first thing you're gonna sense is anxiety if it's unfamiliar. And the fact that we are not oriented, we don't know where we stand, COVID, politics, if things are up in the air, it is something that takes a toll on us. I think that now that you hear a little bit of hope because of the vaccine, at least you can speculate that there is going to be an end. It's not clear what it is, but when we work with uncertainty with clients, we actually try to expose them to uncertainty, to basically, in a way, train ourselves to be able to function, to be able to sustain negative emotions, even though there is uncertainty, especially when in clinical conditions.
So developing a tolerance for uncertainty, there's a lot of value in that. It's funny. I was actually talking about that at our convention last year and how we deal with uncertainties. So that's really interesting. Ann Palmer has a question. What do you think of the idea of admitting to students that some of them know a lot more about technology than I do, and asking them to share with other students and with me? That idea of empowering your students.
That is amazing idea. When we talk a little bit about teaching tips, and this is something that is not, I do that and it's recommended. The connection between you and students will be much stronger. The rapport will be better if they see a human being in front of them. And in fact, many students complain about, I understand that a lot of professors are not technically, sort of inclined, but and they feel less stress if you actually share that with them. I'm sorry that I'm not great at it, but you can help me out. It's okay. We don't have to be superhuman, strong, know-it-all sort of entities. They need to feel that we are like them. We're in the same place.
And and teachers can model what it looks like to be a good student by saying, I don't know, I'm interested, I'm growing. Let me learn from you. It can be a really powerful experience for them. So you've been doing this for several months now, and you've been trying new things in your classrooms. Talk a little bit about that. What's your story?
In the story began this spring, where the COVID started, and we got this notice that we have to, within, I think, 13 days or something, transition to remote. And I never taught anything other than face-to-face. I had a little bit experience of remote therapy, but nothing like that. And I'm an overdoer and an overachiever, and it was a problem for me because I immediately freaked out. I need to change everything. And I sort of put something together. It wasn't great. I mean, students liked it because it was inflation of A's in my class, but it didn't work so great. And I didn't have time. It was hard, but luckily in the summer, we had a mandatory remote teaching training by Texas State. It's actually rather extensive. A lot of modules. I think it took me about 12, 13 hours net with actually tests that you need to pass at every stage. And as your common nerd, I actually enjoyed it and I learned a lot. And it took me to a different place in terms of thinking about how I teach and what do I do in the class. So the first thing that caught my attention is the difference between goals and objectives in the course. The goal is global, right? And objectives are measurable steps towards that goal. And it took me back to basically rethink my entire course with the context of remote teaching. The first thing I realized that I cannot just administer multiple choice tests, right? It doesn't work that way anymore. Academic honesty, and then they can Google everything online. I teach abnormal psychology. So this took me to actually change the textbook even. I went with a case book instead of a textbook where you actually have clinical cases. My test, I developed tests that have vignettes that tell a story about the character, and then they have a few questions after that. So I realized that even if you create the best Canvas website with all these modules and everything, you need to orient your students. It's too much. So they emphasize the start button, which I did. So start here, and then you get all the steps. You walk them through the steps. So I really felt that I learned a lot. But then the next step was, once I finished that, was to understand that my primary teaching tool is Zoom. And I understood that I'm not going to have even time or motivation to become a word expert on Zoom, and I still am not by far. But I watched a few videos, and I got to basically understand how it works better. The few functions that, for example, share screen with audio, without audio, those little things that I made sure that I have sort of mastered, and it allowed me to feel better when I sit in class, because this is my tool. It's like exactly like walking into a class that we talked about with all these fears, but now I'm more familiar. I watched videos, played around with that. Um, it was nice, but then when I started teaching, I realized that I'm not really as prepared that I thought I am, because I found myself just standing, a foot and a half in front of a slide. I was teaching a slide. And, if most of our communication is not verbal, I did not see my student even. I couldn't see them. I couldn't interact with them.
Completely different experience talking to a screen compared to other human beings.
And I felt that they're losing and I'm losing, both of them. It's a lose-lose situation here. So one thing I did is I started actually putting I asked them to turn on their videos, and I'm now teaching in front of them. I can sense where they have these sort of, I don't understand look on their face, but they're ashamed to ask. I can see when they're, laughing at a joke, or if something needs repetition. I can see that. I can interact with them. And it's a different world. I know it hides my slide a little bit, but it changed a lot. And another tip I got is that after 18 minutes in a class, students have a drop in their alertness. And one of the things that actually promotes that drop is having them watch a slide. And so one of the people that I saw online suggested that I did that. I asked them to click split screen and move the slide in a way that half the screen will be the slide and half the screen will be me. And that speaker, I remember saying, they are not here to look at slides. They don't go to college. They can buy a book. They are coming here to listen to you. They are coming here to see you. And I also speak with my hands a lot, so it kept them awake and alert more, I think. And so every 2 weeks, I remind them, hey, I encourage you to turn on your videos. I encourage you to do that split screen so you can see me. I'll try to keep you awake. And I think it's working better. I feel better, and they say that they're more engaged. And I see them. They ask more questions. It works. I teach students now, not screens.
And how are they about turning on their cameras? I understand that some students can't just because of their circumstances, what may be going on in their home environment. But do you find that most students are okay with that?
So actually, I think that with graduate students is different, right? But with undergrads, I find that it's as if the same number of people that will frequently participate, which is, I'm now teaching a class of 50 people. So I have those 8 people that will always turn on their video and always participate. I try to encourage others, like I always do when hey, I want to hear new voices here in class, but I'm not pushing them. They have their own circumstances. I would say that I did tell them that, speaking about the questions from one of your members, I told them I'm not great in splitting attention. Please, let's decide that I'm not going to look at your chat unless people with significant issues with internet connection. I want to be focused on you. And I have 2 screens, and I have the presentation, I have your question, and I need to look at the time, right? So I want to remove that because I told them I'm not a super multitasker, and they accept that, and it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Even only one student that has connection problems will ask every once in a while.
But if you get 8 students where you can see them on the screen, you can at least tell if your jokes are going over, and I think that's very important.
Yeah, and yeah, they're completely muted, so you have to see them laughing, right, instead of hear them.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, what about attendance? Something I'm hearing a lot from our members is that attendance is dropping, and so even synchronous online courses, faculty are having to move. They say by default they're turning to asynchronous courses because of attendance. What do you say to that?
I can tell you what I do. I don't know if it will be welcomed by many people, but I do the following. First of all, I don't have mandatory attendance, but I take random Zoom attendance. Basically, I download the list of participants and 4 different dates in the semester. And if the student attended at least 3 or 4, they get a percentage of extra credit. And for those that cannot attend for any reason, that contacted me that I know that they cannot attend, they have other extra credit options. But actually, I get almost this, because of that, I get almost the same attendance as I used to get in face-to-face, which is probably 70% on average.
I've heard about some people having a short quiz at each class just so that the students know that they need to be there because there'll be a quiz. So
I have students, by the way, that log in and then I see that they don't really participate because after class I see that they're still there, but they're not just logged into the conversation.
Maybe they didn't like your joke.
Probably.
So what are some other things that you do that you find help with engagement? Because I mean, that's the hard part. If you're physically in the same room, just the medium is just completely different when it's 3D and engaging that way. What do you do in your classes that you find helps with that student engagement?
So first of all, I when I did my training and then I read some more papers, I realized that every survey shows that what students actually are looking for is your personal aspects. What type of person are you? Are you only have that teacher front, or also are you a human, right? So I decided that even though with psychologists there's always the issue in treatment if you want to expose stuff about yourself, but in teaching, I found out that it's not only from studies, it's important. Actually, surveys show that one of the things that actually makes students feel more sort of connected is that you see a pet in the background, literally recommending that you do that. So I show them pictures of Eddie, our dog, and told them, hey, you see how cute he is? If he's going to bark during the semester, remember how cute it is and don't be angry. And I opened classes with asking them how are they doing, and instead of telling them everything is going to be okay all the time, I told them, yeah, usually if they say yeah, not so much, I was like, we're on the same team here. I tell stuff like I have 2 teenage girls, right? So, just to come across as a human being, I will ask them how they're doing, and sometimes we spend a few moments in the beginning, maybe a joke about, okay, let's try it differently. Who had a nice day yesterday? And people are laughing. And I also do something that I learned from you, actually. We so we had that conversation when I told you that uh, we talked about one of the things that everything is sort of formal now. There is no casual, like we said about office hour. And you suggested, hey, maybe stick around. Tell them I will stick around after the class is over if you want to talk to me. And this was one of the best tips I ever got, because I do that when I can, when I don't have a meeting immediately after class. And I told them, guys, I'm going to stick around. If you have questions, we'll talk about anything. And some students that are shy, that don't want to ask, question in class, will ask you questions. Some students, I'm teaching them normal psych, so a lot of times there's questions that are more personal about stuff in the family or there. Uh, I had follow-ups. I had people just interested in talking about a subject that turned out to be another full 1 hour office hour in the next week just to talk about this subject. So this creates some of that informality. A lot is going on before and after class, right? You walk to the class, you have a student walking with you. Sometimes after classes, I had this line of 8 people asking questions about whatever. So I found that your advice is great, and I adopted it, and whenever I can, I'm doing it.
I'm glad that helped. I find that students, I mean, nobody wants to talk in a Zoom environment where they don't see what the reaction is. What you were talking about, if you're talking, you don't know if the students are tracking. I know when I started doing these things years ago, there'd be the sense that is anybody following? Is this connecting at all? And if you're the student, and you're thinking, am I the only one that doesn't understand this? I have a question and maybe everybody else gets it. It can be really intimidating to just talk to this screen. And but yeah, afterwards, say if you want to stick around and talk, that's where a lot of the best conversations happen, even in person classrooms. So.
And by the way, even though you're tired after a class, this is something you always do after class, right? People approach you. But I also think that it shows something, even if they don't use this, right? It's something that I'm there for you. It's not, I'm just not just throwing information at you and closing the Zoom. There's something about that Zoom off that suddenly, right? It's not that the classroom is going emptied slowly. There's nothing. And for them, it's the same thing. There's some sort of interaction, and then there is an off button. And having these few minutes, even if they don't really, some of them, one time they won't show up, it's great.
I've always kind of thought that those are the interactions that make students fall in love with a discipline, where they'll say, I never thought this was interesting, but this faculty member, this professor cared about it so much. Yeah. And there was so much going on with this. And it was because I got to talk with this person. So yeah, making it as human as possible. Our big theme this year with TCCTA is around the value of face-to-face personal connection. And that is really hard to replicate. And certain things are impossible to replicate. It's just not the same.
Yeah.
But to
I have graduate students. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, well, to the extent possible, you want to create as much connection as you can with what we've got to work with.
Yeah, I have graduate students that I never met, that I'm their advisor. They're doing studies with me now. I know training, and they take some of my classes, but I never met them in person. I interview them remotely. They don't live around here, and they moved to Texas. They started their semester. They're in the graduate program. It's a short 2-year program, and I never saw them personally, which, yeah, it's very odd.
Well, I could see that those sorts of casual conversations, the icebreakers at the beginning of class, how's it going, what's going well, what's not going well, can be some of the things that make you look forward to going to class. If you're the faculty member or the student, if you can make it an experience that you say, you know what, I'm actually looking forward to that hour because I know I'm going to talk with some people, some interesting people. It's some good human interaction, and it can help get you the things you were talking about earlier as a faculty member and as a student,
Yeah.
that hey, this feels good. I want this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and giving that to your students beyond what you're talking about as within your discipline can be really valuable. And it can be something that if you're dealing with students that are under a lot of stress, and you can give them that sort of thing where I'm talking with people who seem to care about each other. I'm doing something constructive in my life when it feels like the whole world is just sitting on hold. That this is something, there's some efficacy in my life because I'm steering. I'm doing something productive. That the value of that, I think there's so much that's happening in the world that we don't have control over. And I think teachers are in a position to do something about the crisis we're all in. And that, I think, is in itself is a gift. There are a lot of people who have jobs where all they can do is sit around and wait for this to be over. And faculty get to be a part of helping it, helping us get through it.
Yeah,
And,
we are not just conveyors of information. We are educators, right? This is we help people establish their own self towards the future. And I get a lot of students that are suffering right now and dealing with physiological, medical and psychological problems. And I find that when I get that and I offer somebody to talk to me, not as a therapist, but as a professor, but just listening to them, I always get those students that I tell them, a lot of people are now suffering from migraines. A lot of my students, and they're like, really? It's not only me. So this informal few seconds will allow that exact touch that is missing. Yeah.
There's some comments in the chat about things faculty are doing, like what we're talking about. I hope all of y'all are reading the chat as we go along. These are the kinds of things that happen in these master teacher meetups, just teachers talking with each other and, hey, I tried this little thing and it really worked. Or I'm struggling with this and I haven't figured it out. Really, I'm not the only one. That there's a lot of good that can come from those discussions. So, and even if they're online, Katie's been hearing from a lot of people that that's the 1 hour they really look forward to every week, is where they get to talk with people who are in that same position with them, and you can support each other. Well, Amitai, we're getting close to the end of our time, and I know you have someplace you need to be. This has been a fascinating conversation. I always enjoy talking with you, and it's been, I think, really useful to go over some of these things and share some ideas. I hope our members will keep in mind the 4 Fridays in February that we'll be doing for our convention this year. Go to the website, you can find out more about that and get registered for it. We've got some really amazing sessions that we'll be having there around several themes, including creativity, that I think a lot of people are kind of tired of just surviving all this and want to find what can we do that's really generative and creative and exciting and inspiring in all this. And we have found I think some of the most creative, fascinating people really in the world that we'll be talking with on this topic. We also have a woman named Kristen Betts from Drexel University in Philadelphia, who's going to be talking about the neuroscience of learning, what's going on in the brain, specifically around what's going on in the brain when you're learning in online environments. And she's done some really fascinating research on that. And Amitai, maybe you should do the interview with her because you know the questions to ask. But she's got some really good insights about how to teach effectively online. Also opportunities for y'all just to talk with each other and get to know each other, as well as all the vendors in our exhibit hall that we have every year. They'll be with us, and they've got some great resources that they're moving online that you can interact with them as well. And that is on top of all of the discipline specific sections. We have about 45 different disciplines that will have their own schedule of their own conference within our conference. And we have about a dozen associations that have their annual meeting at the TCCTA convention. They'll be with us as well. So there's a lot going on, which is why we spread it out over 4 weeks so that we could make it manageable in an online environment. So please be with us. for that. We're looking forward to seeing you and engaging with you there. I'm going to check my notes and make sure I haven't. If you found this conversation useful, I hope you'll share the recording of it that we'll be putting on the TCCTA YouTube channel. You can go there and watch it again, or send the link to your friends and colleagues, let them know that it's there. Also, if you could join us on Facebook or on Twitter or on Instagram, we have a lot going on with our social media. It's a good way to find out about those conversations and engage in those online discussions with your friends and colleagues around the state as well. And I believe I've gotten everything there. And I hope you can take away from this. One thing that I'm really learning from this is that we're not alone. As challenging as this is, we're not alone. We are surrounded by people who care about us, who are doing the kinds of things we're doing, and often have the resources and the ideas and the inspiration that we need. And you probably have something that they need as well. And so finding opportunities to connect with each other is probably going to be our best strategy for moving forward. So as always, I feel privileged to be a part of what you'll do in community colleges. You're part of an important part of the answer for Texas getting through the crisis that we're in. I know next legislative session, we'll be talking about that, and we'll be making the case that when Texas needed its community colleges, y'all stepped up in meaningful ways. So thank you for all that you do. And Amitai, thank you for what you do at Texas State. And
Thank you very much for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
Y'all have